Okay, I'm gonna do it this way. Stay. No, hang on. Okay, that's good. 1, 2, 3, check. Welcome back to another video, and welcome to another episode of Dec and Rach, Sunday, Funday, and Night, Part 1. What do we things differently here, guys? Things differently. We're going to start with Ant and Dec's podcast, which is called Hanging Out with Ant and Dec. So, from episode 1, which started on the 22nd of January, the regular podcast, they did the introduction, and then they also did what's in today's app, and then they Dec asked, and what's it all about? Well, things they moved away from each other, like miles away from each other. They away from each other, and they spend more time with their own families. They didn't have much time to just hang out with each other. So, I just went into a daze with each other after saying that. Anyway, so they thought they just spend more time with each other, so that's why they started this podcast, Hanging Out with Ant and Dec. But, guys, originally, that's not the case. I can tell you right now why they started the podcast. It's because of you guys. Well, it's because they asked you guys, and Dec asked you guys last year, jokingly, okay? They were like joking about it, about starting a podcast. Jokingly said that last year on I'm a Celebrity, the after show, which is called Jungle Club. If you haven't seen Jungle Club with Ant and Dec, go ahead and watch that. It's really cool. It's really cool. Cool. I remember that Ant and Dec were jokingly saying that they wanted to start a podcast, and then they asked you guys. Jokingly, they asked you guys if you guys are keen for them to start a podcast. And then they began being serious, and then they asked genuinely to you guys that if you were being serious about for them to start a podcast, just for Ant and Dec to start a podcast. So that's what they did. That's how Hanging Out with Ant and Dec podcast began. Ant and Dec was jokingly last year in Jungle Club. In Jungle Club last year about it. And the result says for itself. So that's how they did that. Then there was also then they went in the podcast for episode 1 when they talked about resolutions. New Year resolutions. Life with kids. They also started the word of the day. But and was trying to improve his vocabulary. So they started doing the word of the day in episode 1. And then they started talking about butchers since Ant moved away from Dec to Wimbledon. Wimbledon. And had to find a new butcher. And he was tossing between, so he found 2 butchers, local butchers in his area, and he was tossing and turning on which local butcher that he wanted to go with. I think maybe even he of course, and eventually picked one and stuck with that one. More on that another time. They also were reminiscing class from the past. And then comes the first episode of Dec's Diary. And then after Dec's Diary was a reflection of Dec's Diary. And then they started talking about the BAFTA. And then they started talking about their first sponsor, which is Santander. And then they started a voice blackmail, which is reading your comments. No, reading your emails. Sorry. Reading your emails. To them about their podcast. Or as well. Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, so Anton started reading your emails on their podcast. And then I decided to play a game called Who Would You Want at a Dinner Party? It's pretty good. You should watch episode 1. And then they were wondering about designing tattoos for Ant. It's almost time for Ant to get his tattoo by Dec. That was the promise and that was the pledge from Dec. And then, of course, I talked about I'm a celebrity. I'm a career. And then at the end of the episode, Ant was trying to say the website which was no, I don't even know myself. So which was something. That was that. Okay, well then they did their first bonus video. And the first bonus video was the mystery door. And they had to guess who was behind the mystery door. And then the reveal was really revealing with tarot cards, palm readings, and crystal readings. This is just episode 1 for part 1 of Sunday, Funday night. Stay tuned for episode 2, to where I can tell you this is a bit like Dec's story. Episode 2 is really interesting. So wait till next week to find out what happens in episode 2 of Hanging Out with Ant and Dec. See you later for part 2 of Sunday, Funday and Night.